Welcome to Cultivating Her, breaking taboos, balancing hormones, and redefining women's health. I'm your host, Christy Edgar, an integrative nutrition health coach and holistic lifestyle expert. Join me as we dive into the world of menstrual health, hormone balance, and the connection to women's wellness. Whether you're looking to decode your cycle, tackle PMS, or manage menopause, this show is your go-to to syncing your lifestyle with your hormonal rhythms. Through candid conversations, practical tips, and a few expert interviews, Cultivating Her empowers women to embrace their cycles and align their lifestyle to boost energy and thrive in every phase of life. Subscribe now and start flowing with confidence as we redefine what it means to be a woman with harmonious health. Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of Cultivating Her. I'm your host, Christy Edgar, integrative nutrition health coach, Fast Like a Girl certified coach, holistic lifestyle expert, and occasionally a massage therapist, though only to close friends and family, and they really have to beg for it. So in this first episode today, I want to talk to you about how I got where I am and why I feel that holistic health is so important, especially in the space of women's health. So we're going to start, I guess it's really hard for me to pinpoint the exact moment when I stepped out of the matrix, so to speak. I grew up with a dad who was gifted at trigger point therapy. He was really great at relieving stiff neck pains. And I suppose some of that kind of transferred over into me because I became a massage therapist. But also, he was a free thinker and he lived very, very much outside of the box. He often challenged me to look beyond cultural norms, and he taught me very early on the power of the human mind. I attribute my open-mindedness to him, but if you ask those who know me well, they will tell you that I have always been a free spirit. I am an empath. I am an optimist. I see the very best in people. I hate injustice. I pray for world peace still. I always have, I always will. And I don't like to take no for an answer. I'm persistent and I love to learn. And I believe that's what makes me an exceptional coach and someone exceptional in the space of women's health and women's wellness, because I've been through a ton of stuff that I can share with other people. My journey started in massage school at the age of 25. I was terrified when they told me that I had to take anatomy and physiology. I was never much of a science girl. Matter of fact, I was lucky to have passed in high school. But something happens to you when you're going to school on your own dime. You become determined, like something fierce. And I was determined from the moment I stepped foot into that classroom to learn as much as I could and get the most I could out of my money. As it turns out, I fell in love with studying the human body. The interconnectedness of it all fascinated me. And for the last almost 25 years, I have often asked, why are these things not common knowledge in the general public? Because it really just seems to me like we should understand the vessel that carries us through this life. And not only should we understand it, but we should know what it takes to keep it healthy. Once upon a time, doctors understood this. Like relationships between doctors and patients were personal. And doctors understood how to treat a whole person. Somewhere along the way, we're not getting into that here today, but medicine became institutionalized and a standard of care was introduced. But that's one based on bottom lines and profit margins. Like healthcare has become so incredibly siloed. We all have, it's all specialty doctors, each in his or her own lane. Medical schools don't require nutrition, like 80% of them actually. And those that do, it's like less than 20 hours of training. So we have medical schools that don't require training. We've forgotten that everything that we ever needed to survive has been provided for us by our Creator. So disease isn't a lack of pharmaceutical drugs. It's an imbalance of one of the 12 systems of the body. Diabetes isn't a metformin deficiency. High blood pressure isn't a statin deficiency. Depression is not an SSRI deficiency. Autoimmune conditions come about because we have a weak and unhealthy microbiome. obesity, well, obesity is the result of a greedy and corrupt Food and Drug Administration. And all of chronic illness is based off of lifestyle decisions. So we currently spend $4.8 trillion, with a T, trillion dollars on healthcare. And 90% of that is on illnesses that could be prevented through lifestyle intervention, which is what I teach. Lifestyle intervention. I am a lifestyle expert. So we have 74% of the population that's overweight or obese. We have 50% of adults with prediabetes and diabetes. And a recent study done by the New England Journal of Medicine showed that 3/4 of the population have metabolic dysfunction. Now what? Metabolic dysfunction. This is a term that's never taught in medical school, which is astonishing to me. It's not discussed ever. And yet it's so incredibly important. So metabolism is the body's ability to regulate blood pressure, cholesterol, glucose, triglycerides, all without medication. Okay? It's health on a cellular level. Okay? So if we go back to basic biology, single cells, little cells, we have millions of them in our body. You have the cell wall, you have the mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of the cell. It makes ATP, which is energy. It's your basic science lesson for the day. But here's the deal. That cell wall will only allow one of two things into it to make energy, and that is glucose and fat. Now, being a child of the 80s and the 90s, I can tell you firsthand the hack job that mainstream media did on fat. But here's the thing. When we remove fat, we have to replace the flavor because fat is delicious. It makes everything taste good. When we remove fat, we have to add sugar. All right, so that's problem number one. So now we have a bunch of fat-free food that's loaded with sugar. Combine that with the form of food pyramid, which, if you remember, was a very heavy bottom loaded with ultra-processed carbohydrates, which also not taught. Carbohydrates immediately turn to sugar the minute you put them into your mouth. So you may not eat white table sugar, you may not eat sweets and candy, but what's your carb intake look like? Do you know? How many carbs are you getting in a day? All of this stuff matters. So glucose fat. We had a whole generation who stopped consuming healthy fat because they were told it was dangerous, and they started loading up on carbs and sugar. So what do you think that did? We have an entire generation of humans now that are living in a sugar-burning body, which means they never tap into the alternate system of the body for making fuel. Remember, we go back to cell anatomy. We have glucose or fat. The body was made to use both. And our bodies are not using the other. We are living in a sugar-burning body, which, by the way, also means our body is acidic. Do a little research on that if you don't believe me, but acidic bodies are a breeding ground for cancer. Cancer cannot survive in an alkaline environment, period. So I struggle to think that this is what God intended when He made us, when He knit us together so perfectly. I say all of these things so that you can understand when we're going forward that I tell you these things not to make you feel bad. Okay? It's because I want you to understand that none of it is your fault. You were taught a certain way, and now I'm here to help you learn a different way. So that's what this whole podcast is going to be about. And the thing is that you might have never experienced anything like this if you were not forced to look outside of the system. Unfortunately for me, at the ripe age of 22, I was given a diagnosis of chronic fatigue. The doctor just kind of looked at me, threw up his hands, and said, "We don't know what to do. Sorry, you're going to have this for the rest of your life." So for 3 years, I struggled to stay well. My immune system was weak, and so if I got sick, it lasted for days. Now, mind you, at that time, I'm 22. I live in South Florida. I am part of the nightlife scene because that's what Fort Lauderdale is. It's all tourism and clubs and whatnot. So I was tending bar and I lived that lifestyle. So not a good combination for chronic fatigue. My very first job out of massage school was at a holistic spa. And I got sick. And my boss came with prescriptions for nutritional healing and all of these suggestions about my lifestyle. I went plant-based. I started practicing yoga. I learned how to meditate. And with this woman's help and the addition of like half a dozen supplements, I was able to put the chronic fatigue in remission. But that experience changed my life. And for many, many years after, I studied and coached friends, family, and clients through the lens of holistic health while they were laying on my massage table. They would come in and they would have ailments and they would talk to me. They would ask questions and I would just give them advice. So, and I would love to say that that was like, oh yes, I figured it all out and I knew right from then that's what I did. I didn't. I had a child, my daughter. My husband and I decided that we were going to move to Ohio with her because I didn't want to raise kids in South Florida. And what I will tell you is that moving to a new place, especially a place like Ohio, no disrespect, but it was like I stepped back 20 years. I was a complete duck out of water. I was ostracized by pretty much everybody about my beliefs and the things that I viewed and how I lived my life. And so I found myself letting go of the things that I knew were true in order to fit in and to create a life. And ultimately I paid the price because I got sick again. So after my third child, I became sick with like intestinal gut issues. And so I had bloating, gas, diarrhea, nausea, burning in my intestines. And then no matter what I didn't eat or how much I exercised, I still could not lose weight. So I swallowed my pride and with lack of better judgment, I went and saw a doctor. Because you think, oh, they'll help, right? Wrong. He looked at my blood work and he said, oh, you are the healthiest person I have on paper, despite the fact that I was 25 pounds overweight and I had significant complaints. He basically told me that he could give me an antidepressant. Yes, you heard that right. An antidepressant for my gut issues. Never in my life had I felt more unseen or unheard. I was just devastated. So needless to say, I got a second opinion, a third opinion. And I finally found a physician's assistant who introduced me to gut health. She told me, Google gut health. She introduced me to the elimination diet. I eliminated gluten and dairy, and we discovered that I had a dairy intolerance and that I also had a candida overgrowth, which I was able to address and heal my gut microbiome. Great. But the gut was understanding the gut microbiome became the next rabbit hole that I went down because I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. The microbiome of a human is similar to what they taught us about the forest biome and the ocean biome. And like humans have this biome that they process food and stay healthy, process hormones, and it's where their immune system lives, and just amazing. But then when you realize that health is so intrinsically connected to the health of the gut, you're like, oh man, this is big. So I basically went to nutrition school. I went to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, and they talked about the microbiome and gut health, and it was awesome. And I got out and I was coaching, and we were going through COVID, and I was doing high intensity interval training 4 to 5 times a week. My diet was as clean could get. And I still had that spare tire sitting around my waist. And I was like, what is happening? What is going on? And I stumbled across Dr. Mindy Pelz on a global health forum with Zach Bush. For those of you who don't know, Zach Bush's platform is the connection between the Earth's biome and the microbiome. And so it's a lot of regeneration and sustainability and human beings on a cellular level. Totally random that I come across a lady who's talking about periods. And I'm like, what? And you know, when you hear something and like it just resonates like deep in your soul, like that that like this is it. This is the thing. Well, she started talking about the importance of women understanding the connection between their cycling hormones and all the other aspects of their health. And the way that she explained it was so easy to understand. And then given the basis of knowledge that I had about the endocrine system and how the hormones, all of the hormones in the body work, and the feedback loop, and it was just amazing to me. I was like, oh my goodness, this is where it's at. So this hierarchy of hormones plays a huge role in everyone's health, but literally for women who are not only put here to survive, we're here to procreate. That blew my mind, because I'm like, wow, why are we not teaching these things when they separate us as young girls and they teach us that we're going to have a period for the rest of our lives? Why do they not teach us that we have estrogen and testosterone and progesterone and it cycles, and that those hormones like specific things and that they need certain things? Why are we not being taught that? That matters. So it wasn't until the 90s when medicine, quote unquote, started looking at women at all through a lens of research and recommendation. Most of the protocols we get, ladies, are for men. Most of the studies are done on men because we are not level test subjects, because our hormones fluctuate on a 28 to 30 day cycle. Mind-blowing, right? All right. So, and I wanted to understand too, and you're going to learn this here the more you're on my podcast, when they separate us again in high school and explain to girls, oh, this period is how you get pregnant and how you have babies. And they tell you about condoms and other methods of birth control, and they want to put you on a pill. Why don't they ever explain that the hormones are what makes the egg release, which is what makes you fertile, and that if you really understood your cycle, you could know when you were fertile and not have sex and avoid pregnancy without any kind of intervention other than just being aware of your own human body? Mind-blowing, I know, right? So here's the other thing about the period and about hormones that we have never openly discussed. Why do we make it such a shameful thing? Like, why is it such a hush-hush conversation? Oh, it's that time. Why do we hide? We didn't ask for it. And maybe if we understood what was going on, it might give us an insight as to why we feel and act the way we do. Like, for instance, estrogen brings with her this whole gang of happy hormones. But when she leaves, she takes all those happy hormones with her. I.e., we're grumpy, we're a little moody, we have someone ignorant who says, oh, is it your time? Well, kind of, yes. But if we knew that our estrogen was leaving and we knew that we were a little bit raw, would we handle our days different? Would we handle people different? I just think there's a whole lot that could really change the paradigm for us where that's concerned. Also, we crave chocolate. Right? And we feel like, oh, we suck. I am so good. I do so good on my diet. 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I'm awesome. And then right before my period comes, I crave all these things and I fall off the wagon and I suck. Nope, you don't suck. Actually, your body's making progesterone, and progesterone likes carbs and sugar it's a precursor to making progesterone. Our body literally is like, hey, give us this thing we need. It's not our willpower. It's what our body needs. So keep that in mind too. And how much would that have changed for us in terms of a healthy lifestyle? We're not falling off the wagon. We're giving the body what it needs. And when it doesn't need it anymore, we're going to go back to the other way we were doing things. We don't have to be the same 24/7, 365. Our hormones certainly aren't, so we shouldn't be either. And let's not forget menopause. Sweet, sweet menopause. Or what I later found out, perimenopause, because menopause is technically defined as 365 days without a period. Perimenopause is the time leading up to when there is this hormonal handoff. And ladies, it could last 10 years. So, what's happening in this hormonal handoff? Basically, your ovaries assess that egg supply is getting low, and they they begin to hand the job of making sex hormones to the adrenals. So even if you're postmenopausal, you're still making estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, just in lower doses and from a different gland. Now, here's the thing about menopause. It goes back to one of the first things I talked about, metabolic health. Symptoms of menopause, perimenopause, whatever you want to call it, are worse when you aren't metabolically healthy. So estrogen dominance, insulin resistance, which by the way is connected to low testosterone, excess cortisol. Perimenopause is going to be harder for you if you have any of these problems. Also, that lovely spare tire that shows up is going to be because of perimenopause. It's because of the excess hormones. It's because the body is like, what do we do with all of this? That's what's going on. So my daughter runs a 4x800, and I like to use this analogy for the hormonal handoff. So if the anchor on your relay team ran a marathon in the morning, when it's their turn to get the baton, that runner is going to be exhausted. That runner's not going to do their best. There's not going to be success in the team. So this isn't really much different for the adrenals, which remember make our cortisol. That's our stress hormone. So if we have high stress levels leading into perimenopause, when the handoff starts to happen, your adrenals are exhausted and they're like, what the crap? No, sorry, we aren't equipped for this. And then that brings us back to the feedback where everything is connected. So what do you do? Because most doctors don't teach lifestyle. That's what I teach. So here's what I would say about doctors. They're great. Testing is great, but their job is to diagnose and prescribe. Okay. And just remember that most drugs and protocols aren't tested on women. So do your homework. Ask a lot of questions. Don't just accept what is told to you if it doesn't feel right to you. Ask a lot of questions. And then remember that prescriptions treat symptoms, not the root cause. So the root cause of many of these issues are all related to lifestyle. So ask the questions, and if you decide that medicine is what you need in the moment, that is fine. More than fine. No one should have to suffer. But make sure that you're also addressing root cause, which is lifestyle. And that's where I come in. So I'm going to give you 5 quick lifestyle tips that I would suggest that you start implementing right now. And we're going to go through them in further episodes, but I'm going to give you a quick rundown now. Number 1 is learn the rhythm of the cycle. Okay. Lots of resources on my website for that. Next podcast is literally going to be all we talk about, all things period. Learn the rhythm. Number 2, create an eating window. This is very, very different from fasting. This is more considered time-restricted eating. It's just that we don't need to be eating all of the time. Give that digestive system a break and maybe learn what to do to heal your gut. Stop snacking. 3 square meals a day. Protein, healthy fat, fiber, every meal. Okay? Number 3, I want you to pay attention to your toxic load and your detox pathways. Toxins are everywhere. We are living in the most toxic time in human history. Lots of other times in my podcast, we will be talking about that as well. But learn how to support your detox pathways. Those are kidneys, liver, intestines, lymphatic, all of that. Learn to support them with foods and herbs. Make sure that you're peeing, pooping, and sweating on a regular basis. Number 4, lower inflammation. And we do this mostly by eliminating seed oils. Definitely come back and show up on the next 2 podcasts. Definitely going to talk about seed oils. All sorts of information on my website and my social media regarding that. But get them out. They're terrible. They cause inflammation around the cell wall that does not allow the cell to function on the level that it needs to. And then last but not least, I'm going to say reduce or learn to manage stress. I get that we're not getting rid of stress entirely, but learn when to say yes and when to say no. Make decisions based on what your values are and what you want for your family, your business, your career. But learn to manage the stress. And for, say yes to yes things, say no to no things, but also learn how to relax. Meditation, yoga, Pilates even, anything that's quieting and stilling, walking in nature, sitting on the beach. Like all of these things help to reduce stress. Just breathing. Don't underestimate the power of just taking a couple of deep breaths right where you sit. Okay, so just a quick recap on those lifestyle changes that I would recommend. Number 1 is learn your cycle. Number 2 is eat in a window. 3 is pay attention to toxins. 4 is lower inflammation. And 5 is manage your stress. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so many facets of lifestyle, and they're all very, very personal. Every person is different. You have different health challenges, different goals, and are at different stages of your healthcare journey. Obviously, as a coach, I highly recommend learning how to fast and having a coach to help with lifestyle interventions. But that's just because that's what I do. Thank you for joining me on this journey to educate and empower. I hope you found value in what you heard and will come back to listen again. Together, we're going to create a community of women empowered to transform their health. If you're excited to be part of this, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with the other women in your life who need health support tailored to that X chromosome. Until next time, be kind, be well, cultivate your health.